Good morning, world. Good afternoon, world. Evening, world.
Hi, guys.
Sorry, I had to do that.
Yeah, no, of course. We have to introduce ourselves. Okay. Let me just see. I hope everyone can transfer onto this platform because I've just opened a new window.
Sorry, I had to do that.
Okay, that's all good. All right. Hi guys, welcome to Bridging the Realm. My name is Desi, and today, as many of you already know, we'll be talking about the important Age of Aquarius, which I'm sure many of you want to learn everything about. I hope that you guys can actually transfer into this new window because we've just opened up our new window for the live with Steve, as I'm sure many of you already know. But just for those of you who are new to this channel or new to these channels in general, I'll just give a short introduction to Steve. And Steve Judd is a professional astrologer, and he's been an astrologer for over 40 years, bringing amazing astrology to the world. To date, he has done over 40,000 readings. That's 40,000, quite impressive. So a lot of history there and a lot of information there that I'm sure we'll all be able to gain a lot of really, really important things from for ourselves. And his work includes character analysis, location and relationship issues, past and present explanations, as well as future exploration, and anything to do with the evolution of astrology. So Steve's evil twin brother, sometimes known as the caustic astrologer, periodically surfaces through the media from doing loads of radio talk shows, as well as online events, live streams, and a lot of YouTube videos, where his popular blogs gain over thousands of views and comments every day, as I'm sure many of you already know, as you're probably joining me from his channel right now. So yes, Steve is very committed to catalyzing the world and helping the people to empower and to think for themselves. So it's a pretty big quest for our world today, but I'm sure a lot of people can agree with me that we do need people like Steve, because this time that we're in right now is so confusing and just so chaotic that if we didn't have people like Steve, a lot of us will be completely lost. So I'm sure you can all agree with me that we're very, very lucky to have him and to have him here with me today for the first time. So welcome, Steve. Thank you so much for being with me.
And hello, world. Nice one.
How are you? How are you today? How are you coping with the pandemic and everything that's going on, lockdown?
Still alive. Yeah, coping is the right word. Coping well. I'm kind of all right with it, because I wouldn't describe myself as a hermit, but I work from home anyway, and I'm quite used to not going out in the daytime. So, you know, for me staying at home it's a bummer not being able to go out so much, but it's a lot better for me than it is for most other people. So I'm counting my fortunes.
Yeah, definitely. I've noticed with a lot of people who have already worked from home, it's pretty much, you know, for them it's kind of, well, it's the same thing, you know, they're just working from home, not much has changed, just they can't really go out much. But yeah, but if for other people who work, you know, out and go out every day, is pretty different. And I know a lot of people who are kind of having not a hard time, but finding it very confusing and weird to stay at home for the whole time. So
this is changing the future in a really big and permanent way, and we're nowhere near yet understanding some of the big changes that are going to have to come in as a result of this. Yeah. But within 6 months, we're going to be in a very, very different space. It's going to be fascinating to observe from a more objective perspective.
Yeah, probably not so much if you're actually in all the changes, but yeah, it'll be interesting to watch what happens and how people everything. Yeah, God, I mean, I think everyone can pretty much feel it though. I think whether you're tuned in or spiritual or not, you know, whatever people kind of like to call it, everyone can feel that, isn't it? Everyone knows that we're at this point of huge change. There's no going back. Whatever happened before happened, and now it's just kind of like this brand new door is opening before us that I guess some people want to walk through, others don't, others want to go back, you know. It's kind of like, where do we go? What do we do?
A couple of days ago, about 4 days ago, I was on one of my rare excursions out. I was in a friend's garden, and I'm 64 years old, and for the very first time in my life, I saw a song thrush. I've never seen a song thrush before, but a couple of them just landed in the tree opposite me and started warbling.
Wow.
And I was like, and to hear the bees and see the birds, there's so many birds out there, and to see the wildflowers growing, and the idea of going back to the sort of nitrogen oxide from the cars and the chemtrails from the planes and the burgers and the processed food, just kind of, I hope not. I hope not. Not as bad as it was.
Yeah.
The changes that are coming, Desi, they're going to be massive. The idea of going back to work in a concentrated office environment, not going to really happen, you know? A lot more people are going to be working from home, so there's going to be a lot less cars on the road. Planes, when they come back, are going to be so much more expensive. And who wants to go on a cruise any time in the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I don't think anyone want to do
The world is changing.
Yeah.
We're going to have to address individual mental health issues a lot more. We're going to have to change the way we deal with the elder generations and pay a bit more time and energy into our elders. We're going to have to look at the way we relate to each other in terms of both family, relationship, social. There's things like pop festivals, music concerts, football grounds, churches, anywhere where people congregate in big numbers. That's going to be a contentious one in years to come. So, yeah, we may be seeing the end, or at least a massive change in that type of congregational way. So, yeah, we'll see in the next 6 months.
Yeah. I'm kind of sad about the concerts though. I mean, concerts are always nice to go to. So now we're like, oh, we'll just watch YouTube from home.
Yeah. You're speaking to a long-term Glastonbury veteran.
Yeah.
You know, I've been at Glastonbury 10, 15 times in my life. I was one of the people who run all the green fields. So yeah, I'm in a way unfortunate because I've had my times at festivals and things like that. But that doesn't mean I don't want to go again. The idea of never being able to go clubbing again is like,
yeah, oh my God.
Yes, you can at home, but
yeah, that's gonna be terrible. No, we need music, like music sound, you know, it makes the world spin, right? We need that kind of culture, but I guess it would just be different the way.
Yeah, it won't fade, it'll be different. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, well, I guess this is the time for creativity, isn't it? It's the time for us to redo everything to just make it better in a way. And it was really interesting, actually. I was listening to someone speak about this earlier, and they were talking about this idea of how a lot of people now are, you know, quite empathic, and they can feel people's energies. Pretty much, I mean, we're all made out of energy, right? So we can all feel each other's energy constantly. And maybe they were saying that maybe this social distancing is not such a bad idea because I mean, being quite sensitive myself, I know that I can get really affected by other people's energies around me. So that social distancing and having the space for myself is actually quite good because it gives you the chance to recharge. Obviously, we don't want too much of it because then you don't want to be alone all the time. But there is, I think, a good balance is a need for sure, because a lot of people are not actually aware how sensitive they are to other people's energies and to people, to just energy around them, you know, whether you're, you know, in a house or in living in a specific space that where the energy is not so good, that also can affect us a lot. So maybe this is a good time for people to start becoming a lot more aware of how the outside is affecting the inside as well.
Agreed. As an astrologer, I see all things. I see the happiness and the joy, and I see the aggression and the challenges. And I get what you mean about the need for people to reclaim their own individual space, but at the same time, not at the point of destroying the essence of community. For example, in England, tonight at 8 p.m, a lot of people will be going out their front doors and applauding the NHS. Now, in my street, 3 weeks ago, there was about 6 of us doing it. 2 weeks ago, there was about 15 people, and including a couple of kids with saucepans. Last week, there was about 30 people with saucepans and tambourines and 1 trumpet. So tonight, I'm taking my djembe out there, and there's going to be loads of people out there, and we'll have a really good clapping, shouting, whooping, trumpet playing, drumming for a couple of minutes, and then we'll all come back in and get on with our lives again.
Maybe this will be the new way of partying, you know?
Well, you see that town in the north of England called Belper, where every day, I think it's 5, 6 o'clock, everyone leans out the front door or the front window and just moves like the cow noise. And the whole town does it. And it's like, okay, that's weird, but it's really good because community. Thing about humans is we are gregarious by nature. And humanity has something that I don't think any other species on planet has ever really had, at least to the quality we've got. We can laugh at ourselves. We can take the mickey out of ourselves. And that gives us, I don't know, a degree of self-reflective consciousness, a self-reflectiveness that stops us taking ourselves too seriously. And I love human, especially British, but human humour.
Definitely.
So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh yeah, we can definitely make a fools out of ourselves, which is nice because it's good not to take everything too seriously because life is too serious anyway. So we need to have those breaks where we just laugh and don't think about the seriousness of life.
As many people know, my tag on my email has been for 2 decades now, negativity.
Oops. I think the sound's gone off. Something happened. Let's see. Is there a mute button that went off on there?
No, I'm good this end.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Maybe it was just me. Okay, great. All right. Wow, we have quite a lot of people here today. Wow, 300 people. Nice. All right, guys. Just to let you know, if you do have any questions, do write them at the end. So in about 15 minutes, you can please put your questions in, and we can go ahead and ask Steve. Fire away with all the questions, and please put question in capital letters so that we know it's a question. So, but yeah, before we get into the whole Age of Aquarius, which I'm sure everyone wants to kind of know about, let's start off with you, and let's tell me about how you started this whole thing in astrology. For anyone who might not know, I'm sure a lot of people have already followed you for a long time and know, but for anyone who might not know, how did you start this, and what drew you to astrology in the first place?
I left home when I was 15. And when you were 15 in 1970, the only way to leave home was to join the army. So I joined the army, and when I crashed my first tank, they quickly worked out I wasn't cut out to be a proper soldier. So they ran a lot of intelligence tests on me and found I was really good with ciphers and codes. I left the army when I was 20 for reasons that I'm not going to go into live on screen. And then joined the counterculture that was developing in the mid-70s in the south of England. And after experimenting with a few things I probably shouldn't have done for a couple of years in the mid-70s, someone then put this book of astrology in front of me. And I went, oh, that's symbols. Oh, I get that. And then around about 1980, I read some stuff on astrology that really sort of made me think, whoa, 1979, this is really interesting. So in 1980, I started learning how to do it. And then in 1981, I started doing horoscopes for other people. And then in 1999, I started doing it full time on the telephone lines as it was just emerging at that time. And that's when I got my first software. And then since 2000, doing readings has been my only source of income. And I just happened to hit astrology at the same time as the computer age generated. For the first 15, 18 years of my astrological life, there were no computers, or very few. So you had to do it all by hand. So, but just as I really started getting into my prime, so the computer revolution happened. And all of a sudden, instead of being able to do 1 a day, I could do 6 a day. And it's like, whoa. So, and just the story goes on. So great. I consider myself blessed. I always say that people don't find astrology. Astrology finds people. That means that astrology is not an it. I call it a she. And she found me at just the right time. And since that time, I know she found lots of other people, many of whom will be watching this. And for all the different theories and books and courses, the single best way to become a good astrologer is just simple. It's practice, practice, practice. Do as many chart readings as you can and just don't ever stop. There you go.
And we've over 1,000 readings, so I think that says a lot about, you know, how good you were, and the fact that you have so many people coming back to you over and over again. So I think that's pretty telling in itself. That
Yeah, I've done about 40,000 reading, but 15,000 of them were over a period of about 3 years on the phone lines.
wow.
When I was working sort of 40, 50 hours a week and doing sort of 5 readings an hour. And that's when you pick the phone up and you go, hello, my name's Steve, I'm an astrologer. When's your birthday? Bang. When's your date of birth? Bang. When's your birthday? Bang. And you're off. And you've got no time to think about it because they're paying top dollar. So that's where I cut my teeth. That's where I learned to be sharp. So
See that, yeah.
Everyone's got a different way of doing it, but the more you do it, the more you practice, the better you become.
Yeah, no, definitely. And now that you mentioned it, yeah, I really like how kind of straight to the point you are. You know, you don't beat around the bush and, you know, try to word things in a different way. It's kind of like, right, this is, you know, this is what this means for you, and this is why, you know, you do this and that. So
yeah, I wouldn't describe myself as subtle or tactful.
But that's good, because people sometimes, you know, you need that. You need someone to just tell you straight up, this is why you do this, because you have this in your chart. And that makes so much sense, because it's, and then you're like, okay, wow, that makes sense for me now, because, and now I don't think I'm crazy. So
yeah. Oh yeah. You get a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems that half my job is reassuring people that actually you're in touch, you're sane, you're not making it up, and it is happening, and it's okay. And you see the look go across their eyes when they think, oh, thank God for that. It's like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, wow, crazy. Well, okay. Well, let's get into it. You know, Age of Aquarius, big name, but I think a lot of people don't actually really know what it means. I don't think I even know what it means, even though I have an Aquarian, you know, I'm an Aquarius star sign, and I still don't know what it means. And this, I have to say, in the beginning, I was very kind of, you know, like, yes, Age of Aquarius, here we come, and then now I'm kind of like, oh no, what's going on, you know? It's not starting good.
Okay.
Yeah.
we can get into the meaning of the Age of Aquarius later. But first of all, can I take 5 minutes to actually explain what it is?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to keep it as simple as I can. The Earth has 3 different movements. It spins on its axis every 24 hours. Hence we got the day. It goes around the sun once a year. But there's a 3rd movement, and that is that its axis spins very, very, very slowly. Very slowly. And there's a cycle, and it's called the Precession of the Equinoxes. And it takes about 25,900 to 26,000 years. And what that means, if you read it in real terms, is that when I was born 64 years ago, the spring equinox, 0 degrees Aries, the very start of the zodiac, was always on March the 20th. The precession of the equinox means that the spring equinox point moves 1 degree every 72 years. So now the spring equinox is on March the 21st. And in another 70 years' time, it's going to be on March the 22nd. And in another 70 years' time, it'll be on March the 23rd. And if you move those 360 individual degrees, 1 degree every 72 years, you end up with 25,920 years, the precession of the equinoxes. So the actual 0 point of Aries is when you look at the sun, and the sun is at that point between Aries and Pisces. Now, there's something called the fiducial point. I'm not going to go into too complicated on this. Long ago, the constellations of the zodiac in the sky fitted the 12 sort of banana shapes from the North Pole to the South Pole that constitute the signs of the zodiac. But over the last 2,500 years, the stars in the sky have moved slowly. We can't see it in one lifetime. But over 1,000 years, you can see how the constellations have changed shape slowly, but very slowly, but gradually, consistently. So over 2,500 years, they've changed a lot. So now the constellations in the heavens bear no resemblance to the actual positions where they were 2,500 years ago, which is why sidereal astrology and tropical astrology are so different. And this is why a lot of people will go, oh, astrology doesn't work. There's actually 13 signs. It's the 13th sign of the zodiac, and Scorpio is only 10 degrees long, and Capricorn's 48 degrees long. It's like, no, right? It's if you say that every 72 years, the point of the spring equinox moves forward 1 degree, then every 30 degrees is 2,160 years. This is known as an astrological age. So if we go back 2,000 to 2,100 years ago, we see the start of the age of Pisces. Now, this has been, during the age of Pisces, the age of religion, the age of suffering, the time of suffering, the time of sacrifice. If you go back before that, before the age of Pisces, there was the age of Aries, which ran from about 2,300 BC to about 100 BC. And this was the age of the ram. And if you look back in history, you will see that the Romans and the Greeks, they had the ram, the goat, as a major power symbol. If you go before that, from about 4,400 to 2,300 BC, it was the age of Taurus. This is the time of Crete, the Minotaur, Abraham, the Old Testament, and the fatted calf. We worship the bull. Before that, 6,600 to 4,400 BC, it was the age of Gemini. And this is where, 6,000 years ago, this is where communication, networking, Gemini traits became much more of an important thing to emerging humanity. Before that, 8,700 to 6,600 BC, it was the age of Cancer. And this was when tribes began to break into smaller groups like families. And before that, 10,900, 11,000 BC through to about 8,800 BC was the age of Leo. And this was when the flood happened. Now, one bit of sort of synchronous evidence to back this up. It's well known by now and accepted that the Sphinx on the Gaza Plain in Egypt is actually a hell of a lot older than the pyramids. Yeah. Pyramids were built about 2,000, 1,800, 2,000 BC. The Sphinx comes from about 10,000 BC. And first of all, it's meant to be a lion. And it was built in the age of Leo. It was when Leo was rising on the spring equinox 10,000 years ago. And also the base of the Sphinx is really weathered by being immersed in water for so long. So this was the time of the floods. This is when Britain split from the rest of Europe. It's when the flood happened all over the globe. The ice caps melted, and the trauma destroyed the proto-human races at that time and probably pushed them from being right brain into left brain and started a whole new cycle again. And here we are, half a precessional cycle on from that time. And it's like we're on the point of some type of new evolutionary leap, I think. So each astrological age takes 2,160 years. Thus, we are about on the point of the emergence from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. Astrologers love arguing about when the actual date is.
When do you think it is?
And I've got lots of information on that, but we'll come to that. Another time. Okay. So this is actually what it means, the age of Aquarius. It means that the precession of the equinoxes has moved the Earth's wobble so that we're now facing a different constellation for the next 2,000 years.
Wow.
Sounds complicated. It isn't.
Just trying to work it out in my mind right now. No, but it's very interesting. Thank you for that, because it's very interesting to see with going back through the ages, you can kind of see how each one corresponded to the specific sign as well. For example, Gemini in communication and
Yes. Desi, look, if you got something like this, you got a little spinning top. When you got a little top that you spin, right, and it goes round and round and round like a top does. Eventually,
it moves. Yeah.
Eventually, the top begins to wobble very slightly around and round and round and round, and that's what the precession of the equinoxes does.
Oh, so it kind of just moves like this.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. So that means now we're exactly on the opposite side of where we started, which was Leo. So now we're
12,000 BC to 11,000 BC we are entering the age of Leo. Now, around that time, it was the very end of the Stone Age, the very end of the Neolithic age, and at that point, Neanderthal man had disappeared. We were now fully Homo sapiens. We were beginning to stop being nomadic and settling into tribes, beginning to farm fields. Maybe that's what the Age of Virgo was about before that. We were beginning to form homogeneous groups and not being so nomadic. So yeah, 12,000 years on, 12,600 years on, half a precessional cycle, we're at a pivotal point in human history.
Wow.
I'll come back to that one later.
That's a big one, yeah. Okay, so tell me about, when was this term first used? Do we have any history on that? When was it first used? When was it first coined?
When people talk about the Age of Aquarius, normally other people will just jump in and go, oh, that's all New Age mumbo jumbo, right? So it's not just the Age of Aquarius that's in the terminology, it's also the term New Age. Now, the first person to use the term New Age, that I've been able to resource, and that when I did my master's degree, I was taught that the first New Age usage of the word was from Emanuel Swedenborg, a Swedish mystic in the 1780s, 70s, 90s. And his work directly influenced both Edgar Cayce and William Blake, both of whom were prominent New Agers from the past. So the words New Age has been around for 220 years. They were in common parlance by the time we were into early Victorian ages. And by the time the Theosophists and the Rosicrucians were at their peak, around the 1880s, 1890s, 1900s, the New Age was on everybody's lips. The Age of Aquarius itself, the earliest reference to it that I've found is somewhere from the 1930s. Carl Jung did reference it once, but in modern parlance, I'm really ashamed to admit this, but in modern parlance, it's that bloody record. The Dawning of the Age of Aquarius, from Hair, the musical.
Okay.
But that was in the 60s, and that is now kind of 50, 55 years ago. So it's a couple of generations ago. So it's now become an established term in the last 40 or 50 years.
So that record definitely helped it.
The record helped it, brought it into modern culture, modern language.
Yeah. Now I think people just use it a little too sparingly, and they're not quite sure what exactly it means. But yeah, I think that's thank you for explaining that, because that makes sense now. Okay, so definitely, so started with a mystic, which is okay. That makes sense because it's all kind of spiritual based, and
yes,
of Aquarius. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into a little bit about what does that involve? You know, the Age of Aquarius. How can we even begin to grasp the concept of the Age of Aquarius and Aquarius in itself?
If we look back over the last 2,000 years, 2,100 years, in the vast majority of that time, in 95% of the last 2,000 years, humanity has spent 90% of its waking hours working in the fields, bringing the harvests in, tilling the earth. And then on the one day a week, when we weren't working, we went to church or some other type of organized religion where priests looked after our spiritual needs for us, regardless of the religious concept. Many people suggest that with the dawning of the Age of Aquarius, so industrialization, and that we stopped being such a close-knit community and became more of a kind of, not so much robotic workforce, but mechanization happened. And since that time, since the first steam engines leading to the latest technological ability, hence my talking to everyone here, which has only been 160 years from start to finish, because, you know, the first steam engines were 1840, 170 years ago. It's not that long. We're now seeing the emergence of far less ideas about organized religion, organized spirituality, and instead we're seeing much more the emergence of mechanization, machinery, artificial intelligence, and a more kind of detached, impersonal, objective way of dealing with the world, rather than the religious, devoted, faith-orientated times of the last 2,000 years. Now, that doesn't mean to imply that religion, faith, belief is a non-starter, because obviously it's an essential part of our lives. But the way we approach this is going to be very different in the future. As I said, with this virus that's just going on now, churches are closed, and all of a sudden services are being streamed all over the world. Now, if you had said this to the churches even 1 year ago, that they were going to have to close all the churches and just stream all their services, everyone would have went, no. But it's happening now. So I kind of think we're not going to go back to that organized congregations again. So the whole thing about religion and all of the spiritual aspects that go with it is being upgraded into a more technological way of doing it. I mean, God is in the machine now, and everyone's got their own relationship with the divine. However they choose to see the divine as being. That's different to ever before.
Yeah, it's like everything is going online now, and, you know, religion is going online, spirituality is going online, everything is just uploaded into this big computer in the world, basically. Yeah,
it does make you a little bit worried, because all we need is one big solar flare, and that's that. Everything crashes. But you know, let's not go down that road at the moment.
Yeah, but it's interesting about the religion, and, you know, that was all in the age of Pisces, right? And Pisces is kind of all about the mystery, what we don't see, the veil, and you know, now with so much stuff coming out about, you know, the religion and everything that was going on inside the Catholic churches and things like that, you know, the accusations and stuff that had happened like years and years ago, that was all the things that we're now being shown, right? This veil is being lifted in front of us, and we're starting to see what was actually going on behind closed doors and behind these so-called, you know, very sort of godly places and things like that. Which,
yeah, well, I'm not gonna get too controversial about the church on this video, because my views are well known on organized religion and what I call old men in skirts. But it's fascinating that at this time, just as technology is really emerging, just as new attitudes towards spirituality, community, and social life are emerging, so a lot of the old patterns, the old ways of governance, the old ways of belief and religion are collapsing. And we're finding that actually they were not holier than thou. They were essentially corrupt and empowered by people who were just using it for their own gratification. Not all of it. Of course, not all of it. There's always bad apples, there's always good apples. But it wasn't as it was purported to be. So I look forward to a future where everyone works out their own spiritual relationship with the divine. I have a great relationship with spirit. I don't necessarily talk to God every day, but I've got a great relationship with what I call the upstairs department.
Yeah.
You know, they speak to me, I speak to them. That works.
No, I think that's really important. And I think now, especially and you mentioned it in your video earlier today, I think about now is a time for people, you know, this whole isolation is making people, you know, spend time by themselves, but also go inside, you know, go in the inner world and ask themselves, you know, what do they believe in? What do they not believe in? It's really about kind of restructuring our own beliefs, isn't it? Now it's like trying to ask ask ourselves all these questions that we thought we maybe knew the answers to, but now maybe we're starting to realize maybe we need to tweak that a little bit. And
yeah, and I think that one of the side effects of all of this isolation is that we're going to see a sudden upturn and surge in creativity coming out, because people have been stuck indoors and they're either going inside and going, oh, I don't like being on my own, or else they're going to be going, I can write, I can draw, I can paint, I can do music, and they're going to find their creativity coming out. So I suspect we're on the point of a real artistic boom. Which would be wonderful, wonderful. Whole new art.
yeah. Which is very Aquarian, isn't it? Because the Aquarius is all about invention and new things,
Yeah,
and creativity. Yeah.
And it's also about self-empowerment.
Yeah.
It's about kicking off the yoke of imposed doctrines, whether it be the boss telling you how to do your job, or the priest telling you how to think, or the government telling you how to behave. It's now about individuals doing it for themselves. And I'm not encouraging anyone to break the laws, obviously. You can bend the rules a little bit, but obviously you don't break them. But as I said to you before we came on air, one planet, 6 billion different worlds. Everyone's responsible for their own perception. Everyone's responsible for the way they choose to see the world as being. So you can choose to see the world as a horrible place where there's cabals of older men trying to control, dominate, manipulate the world, and all of them billionaires are secretly plotting against us and everyone's got to be compulsory vaccinated. Or you can choose to see the world as a really beautiful place where communities are coming together, everyone's beginning to smile at each other a bit more, and there's genuine hope for the future. It's up to you. It's your choice.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's really important, the community, and also the aspect of the whole mental health, which you've also mentioned before, about kind of trying to understand our inner world and how that connects to the outside as well, isn't it? Trying to understand how we think, how we feel, whether we're actually being influenced by certain outside things in terms of how we think and how we feel about particular things. So I think that's really important. And I think a lot more people becoming aware how we have been influenced to a huge extent by outside things and, beliefs, systems. Yeah. So
in a weird way, this virus situation around the world has caused a lot of people to become a hell of a lot more self-empowered. Yeah. And I never have thought I would say that even 3 months ago. But here we are. Wonderful.
You're saying it now.
Yeah.
Twice. Yeah, well, I want to go back a little bit in terms of the astrology, and tell me about, you mentioned before that Newton was involved at some point, and how did he get involved exactly? The whole.
Well,
where does Newton come into it? Newton and Copernicus, yeah, okay.
Copernicus in the 1590s was the first person to realize, 1580s, 1570s, was the first person to publicly state that the planets went round the sun, instead of all the planets and the sun and the stars going around the earth. And of course, the church persecuted him because the earth was the center of the universe, right? But Copernicus proved it wasn't. And of course, he got castigated. And I'm not sure if he got killed by the church. I think he may have done, but he was really very heavily persecuted. He had to recant, blah, blah, blah. 100 years later, Galileo said the same, and he was also persecuted. But 100 years later, Newton came along, and it was Newton who first worked out the actual number of 72 years per degree of precession. The idea of precession itself comes from a chap in a Greek astronomer and astrologer, because astronomy and astrology were one and the same thing until the invention of the telescope. A chap called Hipparchus in 127 BC, he was the first person to actually suggest that the stars in the sky were going backwards 1 degree a year slowly, and he almost hit on that 72 degrees, but he didn't have the mathematical tools that Newton did, and Newton was the first person to actually work it out precisely. The world owes a debt to Isaac Newton. Newton is seen as, most people know about Newton and gravity. Most people know about Newton and mathematics and physics, etc., etc. What not many people know is that Newton was also an extremely talented alchemist and magician.
Okay.
Not many people know that.
I didn't know that.
No, he knew a lot of different things. And he's one of the very few people to actually have his own mausoleum in Westminster Cathedral. It's a fascinating mausoleum as well. There's a lot of very interesting symbology around that particular part of the cathedral. It's the Abbey, not the cathedral, Westminster Abbey.
Abbey, yeah. Oh.
So yeah, Isaac Newton was very important on this. Before him was a very important individual. Around the time of I think it was 1585 through to about 1632. He died in his late 30s, early 40s. Lived a chap called Nicholas Culpeper. Now, anyone watching, you go and talk to your grandmother or your grandfather or someone like that, you'll probably find a copy tucked on their mantelpiece, well out of the way, of a book called Culpeper's Herbal. Nicholas Culpeper was the first person ever to translate all the old Latin surgical texts into English.
Oh, okay.
And he gave the common man in England, and the common woman, of course, power over their own bodies. Until then, all the surgical texts, all the medicinal texts were written in Latin. So no one could understand apart from the elite, the surgeons and the doctors who could read Latin. So no one had power over their own illnesses apart from the doctors and surgeons. Culpeper translated it all into English. So the body of surgeons did take out a couple of assassination contracts on him. They didn't get him. Culpeper also compiled 30 years of study into Culpeper's Herbal, where he wrote out descriptions of something like 200-300 different herbs, their astrological symbols, the times to plant them, the times to pick them, and the ways to use them, all according to astrology. Wow. And Culpeper, in his book, Culpeper's Herbal, in the section which says how to use these herbs, the very first sentence is, I address myself firstly to those that study astrology, and secondly to the profane. Now, it's from Nicholas Culpeper that we understand the basics of modern herbology, how herbology and astrology ultimately are linked, and it's only a little step from there to homeopathy. I swear by homeopathy and herbalism. It is a choice. Many people would just be switching off now going, homeopathy is total rubbish, it can't work, the science proves it. I don't care what the science says, I know it works. People say to me, do you believe in astrology? And I say, no, because I know astrology. Yeah. I know homeopathy, and I have a really good homeopath, and she knows what she's doing. And a number of my very close friends use homeopathy all the time. It works. So this knowledge is not new. It's been passed down over the millennia, but it's been translated and upgraded as we go into the 21st century. And it kind of points towards a more holistic way of looking at our lives, seeing how the environment, the plants in the earth, the trees, the animals, ourselves, we're all interconnected in some shape or form. And if that sounds like hippy-dippy, left-wing socialism to some people, well, that's fine, that's your opinion. But it's a fact. The holistic paradigm works. And it's something that's only evolved in common consciousness over the last 30 years or so. So yes, here's another example of the emerging Age of Aquarius.
Yeah, definitely. This reminds me of the kind of like, you know, the witchery and the witches kind of lotions and potions, which, you know, but that's what they did. They knew when to plant them and they knew when to harvest them. And
yes.
Yeah, so that's really
I believe that witchcraft, the persecution against witchcraft is actually the persecution against the feminine, because witchcraft is basically a knowledge of herbalism. Yeah. And there's an interest even today with all the major agrochemical merchants and the big pharma. They don't want people to use herbs. They want them to use their chemical medicines. Yeah. So, of course, they're going to continue persecuting the old beliefs and the old ways of doing things, even if they're much healthier than the big pharma, because they don't make money. Classic example. I can go out to my local park, 20 yards away, 30 yards away, and on a certain period of the year, around September, October, I can go into the bushes and I can pick up a little herb called eyebright. I come back, put it in a pot, pour boiling water on it, make a poultice, stick it on my eyes. Hey, my vision gets better. Eyebright. Euphrasia is the Latin term for it. It's been around hundreds of years. It's free.
Okay. So anyone who wants to improve their eyesight, eyebright.
It does what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of this knowledge, it's not been lost. It's been suppressed and repressed, but it's available if you know where to look for it.
And I think, well, do you think now with, you know, the Age of Aquarius and this whole like divine feminine is starting to be more pronounced, do you think that's going to be a lot more available now and people are going to start to look into that more than before?
I don't know if it's going to become available a lot more. I do think that people are going to be searching for something a lot more meaningful, with a lot more integrity in their lives, and they're going to want something that's a bit more authentic and that has a degree of life force in it. The ideas of taking a herb as opposed to a pill of chemicals. Now, there is a crossover. I mean, some pills work. Aspirin is mainly made from willow, but a lot of pills aren't. So the idea of taking a herb which has been growing in the ground and still has life force, it's the same as if you're eating fresh food that's straight from the fields that you pick yourself, or that you know is fresh and it's organic, as opposed to going to a burger chain and eating something that's been artificially GMO'd. And where's the life energy in that? Where's the nutrition in that? I'm sure it's there in the chemical constituents, but in terms of the life force.
Yeah, because essentially it's the energy from those things that we're taking in, isn't it? It's the energy from the plant, from the whatever we're taking. Yeah.
And when you're taking in the animal of the energy of an animal that's been slaughtered in fear, and all that fear has gone into its blood, and then it's put into the burgers that you eat, you want to eat fear?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you say that. I mean, I probably shouldn't mention it, but there is, you know, people who can read energy and aura, they can actually see when that happens. So they can see when you're eating a burger and the fear, you know, the energy frequency in that burger going into your body, and then your body kind of resonating with that. So it's not pretty. But anyway, no.
At the same time, you cannot sort of judge people on what they eat or their lifestyle choices. It's a free world. You can do what you like. You can do what makes you feel good. If you want to go and do that, fine. But there's an element of intelligence here. Being intelligent doesn't mean being clever or smart. Being intelligent means making appropriate choices that is for your long-term benefit and the benefit of the world as well. So by having a healthy diet, having a healthy lifestyle, you're making your life better. And the better your life is, the better lives of people around you and the planet around you. It permeates.
Yeah, I guess it's just taking that responsibility of knowing what you're doing is having an effect on everything else around you, and you know, vice versa. So tell me about that aspect of responsibility, because it's been coming up a lot, especially this year. And I'm not sure whether it's related to Aquarius, the Aquarius thing, or whether it's related to Saturn or one of the planets, but the whole responsibility stuff, it's really coming up.
This is where the timetable for the Age of Aquarius really becomes important. If you go online, let's put it this way. My tutor on my ME, Dr. Nicholas Campion, he's one of the best astrologers in the world. He actually did a lot of serious research, and he found something like 200-300 different dates for the Age of Aquarius. And the earliest was around about 1750, 1760, with the discovery of Uranus, and the latest is about 2400. But everyone thinks they're living in a golden time. Every generation that's ever lived has always seen advances on the previous generation. So every generation that's lived has thought they're living in the golden age because they've got new tools, new inventions that the previous generations didn't have. We're no exception to this, but that is going on an escalatory curve. Come to that another time. That's eschatology, and I'll come back to that in a bit. But with the timetable, there are a growing number of astrologers who are looking back to the time, and I can't remember the actual date. I believe it was May 1962, could have been 63. It was May 62, when there was a couple of day period where there were 7 planets in Aquarius. Now, something like that's extraordinarily rare. The Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn were all in Aquarius for a couple of days, and that doesn't happen. So that's hugely symbolic. When you fast forward to in the last 60 years, the intensity of the large scale astrological patterns in the sky is unlike any other time in history. It's set perhaps at the end of the 1490s. There was a time in the mid-60s when Uranus and Pluto were conjunct in Virgo, and that forcibly transformed. It brought the hippies, and it transformed the way we sort of manifested our social mores, our social ethics and morals. There was, in the 1980s, there was the massive conjunction, first of all, of Saturn with Uranus, and then Saturn with Neptune in Capricorn, followed by the Uranus-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn in the early 90s, 92, 93. And it was at this time that the first algorithms were being put down that birthed the internet. Then we got the grand crosses that were happening in 1999, 2010, 2012, leading to the Uranus-Pluto square a few years ago, and then the massive conjunction of Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto that happened just a few months ago, and the ongoing situations astrologically of this year. And if you extrapolate this forward, then we're now looking forward to the massive conjunction of Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries, the very start of the zodiac, just as Pluto moves into Aquarius and Uranus moves into Gemini. And all of this is happening around 24, 25, 26. After which, everything calms down for a long period of time. So this leads me to assume that over the last 50 years, we've been on a steadily accelerating astrological curve of intensity, which has led us up to this time and for the next few years. And that by the time we're into 6 years from now, we're going to be entering a period of long-term calm. Now, as to what state the world will be in 6 years' time, that's negotiable. But I suspect it's going to be very different to where we are now. And it could be a really dystopian Judge Dredd type world, or it could be a really beautiful place where there's a lot more equality around the world, and that not so many people are still hungry, which would be nice. Yeah. But that remains to be seen. So there's a kind of timetable, astrologically, there's a timetable in place. And that fits with other things, especially the eschatological side of it, the part of us that looks at the acceleration of human evolution. That's something I'm really into as a kind of side hobby, if you like.
Yeah, definitely evolution. Well, we are evolving now, isn't it, with everything? And just like you said, everything has been escalating to this point where now it's just gonna kind of flatten out for a bit. But tell me about the, because I mean, I'm kind of trying to put this together in terms of everything that has happened this year so far, and you were speaking from before about something huge happening in January, on January the 12th, I think it was, and we also, we had the fires in Australia, and then we had, just everything else kind of just escalated from the very beginning of the year. And I guess this was all kind of this build up to now, right, to us entering into Aquarius a little bit. So how are these aspects of Aquarius how have these aspects of Aquarius already manifested? So for example, the detachment we can already see is manifesting because of the isolation that we're in and everything else. What about the rest of it? Things like, you know, responsibility and things like that.
Seems to me that in any type of situation, any type of environment, as we approach something new and we get very close to the launch point of something new, so the remnants of the old get desperate and they still try and manifest quickly. Got to make this happen before the new kicks in. Got to try and stop this. Got to try and make that happen fast. And what we're seeing in the last year or 2 or 3 or 10, since about 2008 and up to now, and probably for another couple of years, is the death gasp, if you like, of the old ways. Now, I'm not suggesting that we're heading into a revolution or a major change in lifestyle, although we probably are. But I am suggesting that the big thing that's going to be changing is a change in consciousness. And that everyone's going to have a sort of a different mindset about the way they want their own individual world to be. And when that's hit enough people, it's going to suddenly take off. And then we will see the emergence of Aquarius. And then the death gasp of the old, such as what we're experiencing now, will fade into the background. If you look at it particularly at this year, this virus is a great leveler. It's not selective of age or wealth or religion or anything. Yeah. It's selective of immune system, but so yeah, it's a fascinating time to be alive. Yeah. But I'm sure everyone who's ever lived has said that.
Yeah, true. But I think we're really at the precipice of this, isn't it? We're at that brink.
We're on the cusp.
Yeah.
I truly believe that by the time I reach my rational lifespan, which will be sort of early mid-80s, another 20 years, I will see the start of the new. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah.
I don't think I volunteered to come here to sort of leave just before it all starts. I think I think part of my reward for having persisted so long is to actually see the start of the new.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
So
you have to see.
Hope so.
I'm sure it will. Well, with the way everything's been progressing so far, it's been so quick, especially in the last few years. Just like you said, it's just been boom, 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 and things are just like changing. But yeah, I think one thing that really surprised me this year, especially, is how big this whole concept of almost like karmic return and taking responsibility for your actions. You know, I think we're all on a global scale, we're all very much now thinking, okay, wow, my actions do have an effect, you know, whether it's, you know, we're looking at the pollution we've created in the air, or whether with our own bodies, you know, how if we're not taking care of our immune system, then we have a likelihood of getting a virus or something, or, you know, so it's this whole aspect of taking responsibility of your actions is so huge right now. For me especially, it's been really evident everywhere. So
there's a point in the horoscope that's called the North Node. It was brought to Britain in the 1890s by the Theosophical Society. Helena P. Blavatsky brought it over, and it's a carryover from the old Hindu astrology. And with it, she brought the translation of the North Node as relating to words related to karma and reincarnation. And I struggled with this one for about 30 years until I realized that actually it came from a culture where at that time, 95% of people had the loincloth they were wearing around their waist and a begging bowl, and that was it. And they lived hand to mouth every single day, and they had no hope. So the only thing they could hope for was if they were good this life, then the next life maybe they'd be wealthier or richer or in a better lifestyle. So hence the concept of karma evolved over millennia. But we live in a Western culture, not an Eastern culture, where there's everyone's more concerned around this life now rather than past lives or next lives. Yeah. Too busy living this life. So I've changed my ideas of karma. So instead of looking at karma and reincarnation, I'm looking at the North Node in terms of mission statement, purpose, and why you volunteered to come to planet Earth in the first place, with the emphasis on the word volunteer. Why are you here? And I think a lot of people in the last few months, especially in the last few weeks, have suddenly started thinking along these terms. Why am I on planet Earth? What is my mission? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? And to many people, they're just going to go back to, okay, I'm going back to work. I'm going to go to watch the football. I'm going to go to the movies. I'm going to get married, have 2.2 kids, mortgage charge. Others will start expanding their consciousness and taking on bigger concepts and opening up to a different type of relationship with the divine, and opening up to a different relationship with everyone around them, and things will move forward. And eventually this will become the new normal, I believe.
I hope. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see it already. There was a huge global meditation. I think it was on the 8th of April.
Yeah.
I think it was some sort of an astrological alignment again. So
yeah, the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that was amazing because I took part as well, and I know thousands of people did. So that was really nice because it was, you know, people, even though we're all separated, we were all kind of coming together in this energetic level, you know, spiritual level, and everyone, I hope, was hoping, you know, for the same thing, which was to get rid of the pandemic.
As I understand it, there was about 250,000 people involved in that.
Yeah.
And when you've got 250,000 people all around the globe, all at exactly the same moment, sending out a really positive vibe, that is going to have an impact.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely. And which I guess is, again, it's something quite Aquarian, isn't it? Because it's us coming together, thinking about community and the future, and inventive, you know, invention, and how we can basically progress from here onwards, which is hopefully us expanding our consciousness. But yeah, I've definitely felt that, and I've been asking myself these questions like, who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing? What is my mission in life? So,
well, in the last few weeks, I've just started, after deliberately, for the first time in years and years and years, I decided to not do any readings for a few weeks when I was first on lockdown, because just what, I need to clear my head to actually deal with this. And I started doing readings again last week. And the more I'm doing readings for people now, it's like there's a difference out there. And I've realized that now, right now, in mid-April, we're now past the first wave of 2020. Yeah. And what's to come is still pretty damn massive. It's going to be different to what's happened so far, but equally as significant. And I'd be failing in my duty as an astrologer if I didn't actually mention a couple of really, really critical times that are coming up later this year. Later this year, the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction will come back. At the same time, Mars will move into Aries at the start of July. Normally, Mars moves into Aries for 6 weeks every 2 years. This time round, Mars is going to be in Aries for 27 weeks because it's going to go retrograde in Aries, its own sign. And when you say to astrologers, Mars is going to be in Aries for over half a year, you see them shiver, because Mars in Aries is not a subtle energy. And when Mars stops going forward and starts going backward, it's going to be standing still for a few weeks, squaring Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. And there's a particular time that seems to trigger in maybe 50% of horoscopes of absolute critical times. And this is the period of about the 15th to the 24th of August. Oh, wow. And there's so many people going to be getting their buttons pushed at that time. There's something incisive, surgical, sharp coming in at that time for a lot of people in a way that is going to create a fair bit of trepidation and potential challenge. After that, there's a new moon on the 16th of October, which will be opposite Mars, square Jupiter, square Pluto, square Saturn, and that also is a critical time. But these are the last 2 times in 2020 where the energy is going to be at an extreme. When Mars starts moving forward and squares Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto for the 3rd and final time in the last 10 days of December, by that time, both Jupiter and Saturn will be conjunct at 0 degrees of Aquarius. Jupiter and Saturn are going to move into Aquarius in December, 2 or 3 days apart from each other. So all of a sudden, all the emphasis is going to go off of Capricorn and move into Aquarius. So yet again, Aquarius. And 3 years from now, Pluto's going to move into Aquarius. So 3 of the big 5 planets are going to be entering Aquarius in the next few years. 2 of them in the next 9 months. So yes, yes, again, Aquarius energy is going to be coming in, but let's get to the end of December. Next year is all about dealing with the changes of this year and finding the new normal. Next year's not going to be easy, but it's not going to be anything like as difficult as this year.
Wow, thank God. I hope so. This year has not been easy. But
Cool.
yeah, let's kind of, I really want to dissect Aquarius, just the sign itself and what it represents, because I feel like once we have a better feel of what Aquarius is, then maybe we are able to kind of maneuver better our way through what's coming.
I'm aware that you're an Aquarian, right? But Aquarius is fundamentally different to anyone else.
Yeah.
It's not,
to put it lightly.
yeah. If I say it's not normal, then most Aquarians will go, what do you mean I'm not normal? To which I'll say, well, you're not abnormal, but you're different. You're not better or worse, but you're different. And the more you try and be normal, the more you screw up.
Yeah.
Whereas the more you accept the difference and live according to them, the more stimulating and innovative you become. Aquarius is basically the sign of humanity, of community. But the idea of community is changing rapidly. For many years, for millennia, we've looked at community as in family. And then in the last 50 years, since the Second World War, communities expanded to include social groups, friends, social life. But recently I'm starting to see a change. It's got to the point where friends are becoming like family, in that they expect you to behave in certain ways so that they feel comfortable in their dealings with you. And beyond friend and beyond family, there's another level of community that I'm trying to aspire to, and that's tribe. Because tribe, they're all over the world, different colour, shape, religion, age, everything. And they love you just the way you are. And if you make big changes, they still love you just the way you are. It's unconditional. And I do believe that this idea of tribe is something that's only going to catch on the more we get into the Aquarian future. So yeah, we're remoulding and reshaping and recreating our notions of community. And that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's the positive side of Aquarius, which is really good. What about the negative sides? What can we expect from that?
Well, Aquarians are known for being quite robotic, detached, impersonal, cold, objective, brilliant at emergencies. You know, if there's a heart attack or a car accident, they're there and they save lives. Yes, no, black, white. But most of the time, they're a little bit of a cold fish on the surface. And yes, there is this thing about Aquarius that's very detached and impersonal, but it's an air sign. They don't really deal with emotion in terms of getting all affected at an empathic and compassionate level. And that's not to say they don't have those qualities. It is to say that if necessary, they can override them and go, right, lives need to be saved, let's do it, bang. As opposed to letting their emotions take control. And that's both robotic, but it's also very useful to the greater community. Aquarius is one of the more idiosyncratic and one of the unusual signs of the zodiac, yes. And you can never categorize them. But then Uranus is ruled these days. It used to be ruled by Saturn. These days it's more ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is the change bringer. And as soon as you start putting an Aquarian in a box, saying this is how they're going to behave, they'll do something to upset the apple cart.
Yeah, no.
So,
no box, please. So, yeah. No, that's pretty telling. Yeah, that. And from all the people Aquarians that I know, I can definitely see that. Eddie, myself, is kind of like, of course we do. I feel like Aquarian people, we can be very good at being detached. We're very good at disconnecting. That I think that's very. It's like something that just comes very easy. And just knowing from how I am, I'm quite easy, just detaching from something. But then underneath that, very, very, very deeply is, whole the emotions and everything else. But I think that's when the whole inner work comes in, you know, the whole notion of shadow work and working on yourself, because it's like all these things that are buried so deep and so, it's like they've been there for years and years and years, and you know, you haven't kind of gone in to dig deep and unravel these things. But now people are realizing that actually we do need to work on ourselves, we do need to unravel all these things that have been, we've suppressed in ourselves. And I feel like maybe that will be showing up more as well, and that's
well, yeah, and then we come back to the virus, because so many people have been isolated, so they've had no option but to do a lot of shadow work. They've had no option but to go into their own caves to deal with their own psychology, or to suppress it and repress it. But that's pretty toxic. But that's what this is. Again, it's down to choice. One of the things that's going to change in the future, I really hope, and I do believe, is that astrology is going to become much more accepted in the future as a true diagnostic tool for understanding ourselves and the world around us. If it's okay with you, I'd like to give you 3 contemporary definitions of astrology. One is about 8 sentences long, and the other 2 are 1 sentence long, and they're all fairly recent. There's a woman called Anne Geneva. She was a doctoral student doing a PhD at New York University, Stony Brook, and she's also the manager of Yale University Press in London. And she wrote a quote about the 17th century astrologers, which I paraphrased and adapted it to the modern astrologers. Astrology is not a science, it's not a religion, it is not magic. Neither is it astronomy, nor is it pluralism, singularity, it's not Neoplatonism, it's not on its own psychology, it's not witchcraft, and it's not methodology. It uses all of these tools. It holds tenets in common with others, and some people are very adept at several of these skills. But in the final analysis, astrology is only itself. It is a unique divinatory and prognostic art embodying centuries of accredited methodology and tradition.
Wow.
One of my tutors on my master's degree, Dr. Patrick Curry, he said, astrology is the practice of relating the heavenly bodies to lives and events on earth, and the tradition that has thus been generated. And my own definition of astrology is a blend of mathematics, geometry, symbology, psychology, pattern recognition, and intuition. And without any or all of these qualities, it doesn't work. So it's not an art and it's not a science. It's unique. It's in between the two.
Wow, I love that. I really love that. And I love that you included, you know, psychology and all of that, because it is a very much a psychological based thing. You know, you're getting into someone's mind, you're getting into someone's world, right? So it's kind
of... Carl Jung, who's the most eminent founder of modern psychology, because I don't have much time for Freud, but I do have a lot of time for Carl Jung. Carl Jung was an astrologer, and Carl Jung said something along the lines of, creative imagination depends on the urge to reclaim and rediscover the future. You can't be creative in the imagination if you're not dreaming of the future, not trying to dream the future in.
Yeah.
He also penned lines along the lines of, he was sacrilegious in certain ways. He said, if we were immortal, would religion exist? And I thought, good question. See, I don't believe in death.
Yeah.
I just believe in transition of consciousness to a different dimension of existence, where time in the different dimension doesn't work the same way as it does down here. So I know that when I get home, there will be a party waiting for me. Yeah. Many people just choose to believe that when you're dead, end of. But to me, that doesn't compute, because what a waste of 60, 70 years of experience. Yeah. So I am looking forward to it, but I'm not in a rush.
Yeah. No one is right now. Everyone wants, well, I don't know about that, but yeah, a lot of people, I guess, want to stay. But tell me about what you've learned from all of your years of experience and, you know, reading for people and that because it is very much this psychology. You're basically sort of like a counselor, aren't you? Because you're not only describing someone's chart and you're telling them why they are the way that they are, which to them starts to find something clicks in and makes sense.
Yeah.
But you're helping them through their problems to understand themselves, to understand the
I'm
outside.
giving them different ways of seeing it
Yeah.
from a more objective and detached perspective. And that gives them a different way of potentially looking forward and stop and getting out of the rut that they're in and seeing a different way of managing their future. I suppose the single most rewarding thing that I get from doing astrology is that I like to think I help other people aspire to something better. And it's not about doing it for other people. It's about giving other people the tools to do it for themselves. If you do it for them, they get addicted to you. If you give them the tools to do it for themselves, they become self-empowered. And then they go out and make their world a better place. So it resonates everywhere else.
That's really important. Yeah. Yeah. It's
So,
almost like
inspiration.
yeah. Would you say that you show them what their highest potential could be through their chart?
Yes. And the pitfalls.
Yeah, and the pitfalls. Yeah. So what we need to be careful of as well.
Yeah. Well, for every up, there's a down. You know, you got to, at the end of the day, I don't have any belief at all in fate or destiny. I'm totally free will orientated. I believe that we all have choices to behave, to think, to act in what we do. By saying that then invokes the idea of having a conscience, and many people do not have a conscience. Now that's not a negative thing. It's just that they just don't work like that.
Yeah.
But again, that's choice.
Yeah. So definitely, I think it will be good if we see more of the astrology becoming more normalized in sort of the regular way. Yeah.
It's got to be a part of the future. It's got to be, because without something like astrology, without an element of spirit or magic in our lives, we just become robots. Yeah. We need something to inspire us in our dreams and our visions and ideas for the future. And astrology fits that package perfectly. When I was a kid, new technology meant having this wonderful little Baker-like thing with a dial on that you could ring numbers on and pick up and speak to people on a long bit of tube, a long bit of wire. Yeah. And we had these little wooden boxes with a little screen like that with black and white moving figures. When I was a kid, spirituality was Sunday school in the church. When I was a kid, there was 2 billion people. Now there's 7.5 billion people. The technology is what we're doing now. Spirituality is out the loop. It's breaking free. Yeah. And the escalation of evolution is not going like that. It's going like that.
Wow.
And once it reaches prime vertical, which will happen very shortly, within the space of my lifetime and the lifetimes of 95% of people watching this, then there's going to be a major change. And it will either collapse in and go back the same way as it did maybe 12,000 years ago, or we'll expand beyond the parameters of the graph and achieve a greater degree of consciousness, and there'll be more awareness of the world we live in and the effects we all have, and hopefully a better community life. Sounds very aspirational and hippy-dippy, but I choose to believe that's the potential.
Totally. And it's kind of about what we do with our time right now and how we use it consciously to make decisions, better decisions, I think.
Every moment we're alive, different timelines go into the future from every moment. And so the idea of throwing fishing lines into the future and magnetizing a good future into ourselves by what we're doing now, affecting our potentials for the future, it's critical. Everything is based around now. If you get semantic about it, there is no past. The future's history. The future's a mystery. All there is now, and that's why it's called the present, because it's a really good gift. That's an old saying, but it's true. All there is now. But that's semantic. Of course, we can influence a future.
Yeah. And ideally, we want the best future.
Ideally, we want the best future, but that doesn't mean a future where you suddenly win the lottery and become a multimillionaire and have a jet and landed estates in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Well, it might do, depending what you want.
But that's not very Aquarian, is it? Aquarian will be more, okay, what is good for the community, right? How can we connect more with the community and do something together and as a community? And yeah.
Classic example. There's a chap out there called Jack Dorsey. He's the guy who founded Twitter. He owns Twitter. He still runs it. He has just, in this last couple of weeks, donated a quarter of his fortune. He's a multi-billionaire. He's donated a quarter of his fortune to all the medical practitioners all around the world dealing with COVID-19. Now, everyone slags or slams down all of the Bill Gates, the Jeff Bezos, all the multi-billionaires in the world. But everyone criticizes them, but you never hear anyone complimenting people like Jack Dorsey, who's actually doing really good things with his money. So, let's bring a bit of balance into this. Let's play credit where credit's due.
Definitely focus on the positive. Do you see more of that happening? Because I don't think Aquarius in general is a very kind of materialistic sign, or in terms of money, so do you see more people maybe becoming more philanthropic and kind of giving?
I hope so, because what I do notice is that as one ages, as people age, yes, a lot of people these days are going, right, I'm going to spend it so that before the kids get hold of it, or they realise I can't take it with me. So it's not about how much you got, or it's becoming not about how much you've got. It's more about what you do with it that counts. It's becoming, I don't want to get into a kind of egotistical thing here, but a lot of people want to leave a good legacy behind them.
Yeah.
And it used to be that they would pay for their children's education, or they would buy their children a house, or, something like that. And that will still happen, of course, but it will also involve looking after the community as well, funding the medical care, funding the social care, funding the health of the elder generation.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely a good start. And as you mentioned before, with the whole tribe, the tribe communities, I think I really see that happening a lot more, because people are, I guess a lot more people are starting to become aware that they don't have to necessarily stick with their family, even though they were born in a specific place or whatever. They don't have to stay there. They can search outside of that for people who resonate more with them, because, some people are becoming a lot more drawn to certain aspects like spirituality, others are not so much. So if you're very spiritual and your family isn't, why stay there? Why not find people who are more resonating with that? So I think maybe.
Hence my aspiration towards finding my tribe. So that's going to become more of a norm.
Yeah. And in terms of career and work and things to focus on, so for example, maybe loads of people now have lost their jobs, right? What do you think, what areas might be more beneficial, or might be becoming more beneficial in the near future for people who maybe are rethinking their jobs, and maybe they should move into a different career or different field? What do you think is a good sector?
Well, there's going to have to be fundamental changes. Look at a country like the US of A, where now you've got something like 15-20 million people claiming unemployment benefit, when there's normally around 600,000. So all of a sudden, the American economy is going to take a massive downturn. Same as in Britain, same as in most other countries. The economic future, we're heading into a massive recession. So, yeah, we're not going to go back to the days of the 1930s, because that just led to World War II and the rise of fascism. And that's not going to happen this time. We're too intelligent, allegedly, for this to happen. Instead, I suspect that with so many people now looking at a different way of working in the future, there's going to be a lot more individual innovation, a lot more people becoming self-employed, a lot more people having a number of different jobs, some of them manual, others more written, others in care or service. And people are going to be spreading their energies in a more diverse way, making themselves more multi-talented, multi-skilled, different income streams. This is likely to become the new normal, I suspect, over the coming year or two.
Mm. And that really taps into the whole self-empowerment theme as well, isn't it? About people really knowing who they are on the inside and kind of shining that light out into the world, shining their own individuality, which is what Aquarius is about. Again, being an individual, being different, being original, I guess. So
yeah, I often say to people, well, look, you don't know until you try. It's better to try and fail than not to try at all. Because every time you try, you learn a bit more, and eventually you succeed.
Mm.
I used to work on a principle that's called fake it till you make it. For the first 10, 15 years, I was thinking, oh shit, can I really do this? Can I do this? And I was reading every book and checking everything, and I was thinking, oh, yeah, it seems to be working. Okay, fingers crossed. And now it's like, okay, just do it. And now I can do it. Now I'm making it. But I faked it for the first 10, 15 years. That's what everyone does in some shape or form until they get that maturity, knowledge, and experience.
And the confidence to do it.
And the confidence, yeah.
And what about, you mentioned earlier intuition about astrology. Do you think we're now a bit more inclined to combining logic and intuition? Because so far they've been so separate, and you see people are either very against very against, you know, the whole psychic stuff and intuition and all that, or very for it. So do you see them blending together now a lot more?
When I see people who go, oh, there's no such thing as intuition, no, there's no such thing as psychic stuff, and I say to them, okay, what were you dreaming about this morning, just before you woke up? Because I say to people, what about your dreams then? Because everybody dreams, and dreams never follow any rules. Dreams can be all over the place. Some of them can be good, some of them can be bad. And dreams put you into a different consciousness state. And then you wake up and you come back into what allegedly is the real world. And you think about it, oh no, forget about it. And it's gone. Yeah. So to me, dream state is as real as this world. And in the same breath, I could say that states of intuition, states of higher awareness are just as real as when I'm doing the washing up. In fact, when I'm doing the washing up is when I get some of my best inspiration, crazy though it sounds. Yeah. And it's the same, when you look at a chart, sometimes you just look at the pattern. You don't look at any of the individual parts, you just look at the pattern. And the pattern kind of imprints. And it goes in and then it comes back up. And sometimes you just open your mouth and the right words come out. And you don't even think about what you're saying. Now, you've got to be experienced to be able to do that. But that's the way it works. It's not just with astrology. It's with any form of talent or work that people have become skilled at. They just look at it, they know what's wrong, they open their mouth, bang, sorted. But it takes decades of experience to get to that point.
But also intuition comes into that, doesn't it? Because to
massively.
Look at the pattern and to be able to feel into that, because I guess it has energy, right? Because it's geometric and it kind of has this resonance that you...
The beautiful thing about intuition is rarely, but occasionally, I say something and I see a client's mouth just drop open. They go, how do you know that? How do you say it? And I go, I don't know. It just came out. If you try and understand it, it disappears. Yeah. If the nature of intuition is that you cannot use logic to describe it. You cannot analyze it. You cannot take it apart and put it back together again. If you try and work it out, it runs away. This is why I say I don't believe in astrology. I know astrology. If I knew how it worked, if I knew precisely how it worked, I wouldn't want to do it and I wouldn't be able to do it. As long as there's an element of magic, intuition, and unknowingness about it, I'm there. But if it became just a sort of normal science, I'd be thinking, no, I don't want to do it anymore. No magic in it.
There's no magic. Yeah, it's that mystical aspect of it that really makes it interesting and something you want to get involved in. Yeah, definitely. And and the Aquarius thing, it's to do with other worlds, right? So just like you said, you know, the dreaming space, and now astral projection is becoming a lot more bigger now. Like people are trying it and they're realizing, you know, you can leave your body, which we do when we dream anyway, but you can do it consciously as well. And, you know, so that's becoming...
So, you know, if over the millennia, when we've looked in the, say, 500 years ago, when we've looked for soothsayers or people to forecast the future, we're looking at the artists or the writers. In the last 50 years, 60 years, we'll be looking at the filmmakers. These are people who are trying to dream what the future is. And these days, there's many different ways of forecasting or predicting the future. And it's becoming more and more varied. For example, space travel. For millennia, and especially in the last 100 years, it's been like, ET come home, there's aliens out there, when are they going to make contact? Yeah. And it's like, wait a minute, we now know that the laws of physics, as we understand them, don't work beyond Saturn. It's all different out there. Time is different, gravity is different. The laws of physics, as we understand it, don't work. Speed of light isn't as fast as we can go, especially with quantum. And everything's a lot more interconnected than we thought. So as we realize this, so the idea of inner space becomes as important as outer space. And actually, I don't believe in little green men or ETs. No. There are aliens on this planet, but they're the humans like the trolls and the people who are disconnected with themselves, who are fearful of their own selves and who choose to see everything in a negative way. They're the real aliens. Now, there's different dimensions of existence, sure, where the fairies live, where the, I don't know, the goblins live, the crop circle makers live, where we go in our dreams. And they're all parallel to us, outside of our range of consciousness. But they're here as well as us. And sometimes we make that breakthrough, and then we're thinking we're seeing aliens, but we're not. They're here as much as us. They're just indigenous. And there is that kind of growing together coming, I hope.
Yeah, and someone just said, someone just commented, UFO sightings have actually skyrocketed in the past few weeks. I read some as well of those, yeah. So UFO sightings becoming more and more pronounced.
When it says UFO, it doesn't mean alien or ET, it just means unidentified flying objects.
It's still something different, isn't it? It's still very like different and like
we're on the point of a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Not a breakdown, a breakthrough. I'm really excited about the future. I'm scared. Well, anticipation and trepidation, not fear.
Yeah.
Definitely. Excitement and nervousness.
It's an excitement of what's to come, but I think more excitement than fear, because we know it's going to be, it will be good. But I wanted to ask, so guys, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in. So we can
say, are people still watching us?
Yeah, they are. Everyone's still commenting. We've got 500 people. Wow. Okay, so guys, feel free to drop in your questions whenever you want to ask Steve while he's here. Just make sure you label it question with big letters so that we know you are asking something. But I mean, wow, this is great stuff. I love talking about this, and I love talking about the unknown and the mystical and the magical, and that's what it's really about. And I hope to see more. I definitely hope to see more like astrology becoming more mainstream, and I think a lot more people are now trying to make it there. Like you doing it, so many other people are taking it on. Like, I mean, the YouTube channels are massive now. There's people that you've got like thousands of viewers every day, and other people. So, and no one really watches TV. I know so many people that don't even own a TV anymore. So it's kind of like everything's just converted online. The no one TV, it's like it's gone. That's
the only reason I've got a television is when there's football on.
Yeah.
When I was doing my master's degree back in 2004, I was working with a number of very well-known astrologers. One of them was called Bernadette Brady. And she said to me, "What do you want from astrology?" And I said, "Oh, I want my own office and my own desk and a big chair so that I can sit and do consultations for people." And she looked at me and she went, "Is that all?" And I thought, well, it's all I've ever aspired to. And then I got it. I got what I wanted. I had the office and the chair, and I was seeing people in my office. And then I realized, actually, I don't need this anymore. I can do it online. So now I've just got rid of it all because I can keep it minimalist and still be much more effective without having all the trappings. So simplicity doesn't mean stupid. It means not complicated. So I like simple. And astrology has an essence of, the more you clutter it up with all the paraphernalia, the more mixed the message is. Whereas the more you keep it simple, bang, the straighter it goes.
Yeah, the message comes through straight and clear. Yeah. Okay, let's see some of the comments here. Someone had a question. Let me just scroll up. Okay. Question: is the mainstream media also becoming more creative, changing in consciousness? Mainstream media, do you mean news by that? Mainstream media. Steve?
By the fact that when we were kids, when I was a kid, there was only 2 television channels, and now there's hundreds.
Yeah.
Even 10, 15 years ago, there was only about 20 channels and 1 or 2 things on the internet. But now media is everywhere in every shape or form. So it has to adapt to survive. I consider much of social media to be an absolute curse because it deflects attention from the more priority things. I don't have much time for social media at all, apart from YouTube, obviously, and to a lesser extent Twitter. But the rest of it is, I think it's quite banal, to be honest. And it distracts people from perhaps the more important things in life.
Scrolling. You know, you have those people that just, it's distracting. I mean, there was a time at one point, I think it was around 2-3 years ago when the short sort of documentaries or short videos, these inspirational videos came out, and they were really great because they were very inspirational and they were about people doing amazing things, and a lot of them were like really funny videos or like really touching videos, and those were really nice. But now it's just kind of just gone down to conspiracy theories and just stuff that's not very
You have to, I honestly think that many of the conspiracy theorists are actually bots. All right, paid for by various vested interest parties, and those people who just see the negative in everything, they're genuinely sad individuals, and I feel actually really sorry for them, even though they really don't like me. Some people really don't like me, and yet here am I, I'm doing my best. And you know, I often say, when someone gives me a negative comment and it's actually really offensive, I just go, right, bye, there's the door, and just go away. I don't want to engage. But at the same time, it's the nature of the beast. If you're going to put yourself out there, you've got to take what comes. You can't be selective.
You have to be thick-skinned for sure if you're doing this work. Yeah,
Teflon coated.
I said to you before, that it really boggles me how people actually have the time to spend a good amount of time writing a very hateful message and sending it to you. You know, you can do so much more in your time. Like, why spend all that time to write this hateful message? Like, I don't even have the time to write a positive message to someone, let alone something negative. It's like, do something better with your time. Why?
Yeah. Like that question just said, how's media changing? Some of the newspapers, which are still very seen as the dinosaur of communication now, some of them just haven't changed. Some of them become actually really hateful and vitriolic. On the surface, they're all wonderful, but then they still got lots of very young, pretty women in very small bikinis in them. And it's like, you're so dinosaurs.
Yeah.
You know, wake up, smell the coffee. People are changing. Attitudes are changing. Just get with it or die.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely changing. I mean, you see things like Channel 4, for example, they have a lot of online stuff that they're doing now because, you know, they know people are not watching TV anymore, so they have to go online. And BBC, they're doing a lot of online documentaries. Everything's online. Everything's changing.
I've got so much time for the BBC. I think it's one of the greatest British institutions, along with the NHS. And I honestly feel that I'm a big fan of the BBC. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to get too contentious. But the BBC and the NHS epitomise the very best of Britain.
I mean, they're kind of the main point of that information, isn't it? The first point of information. Yeah.
I actually trust the BBC.
Yeah, I don't actually. I have to say, I'm not a big BBC. Well, I don't watch TV at all. So
no, but online stuff.
But online stuff as well. Yeah, I mean, that's the first point of information where you go and get everything. So, okay, next question: How will Pluto in Aquarius?
Ooh, that's a good one.
How long? I'm not sure what that means. Oh, you know what that means, so. When
Pluto moved into Libra, in the mid-70s, early 70s, through to the early and mid-80s, we thought it'd be the divorce generation. It did change the way we managed our relationships. When Pluto moved into Scorpio from 84 to 96, 97, we thought, okay, this is going to be a big nuclear war, and it was the end of nuclear war. The Iron Curtain came down, all the missile sites most of them were discontinued. What we didn't see with Pluto in Scorpio before it was too late was it was also the HIV development big time. When Pluto moved into Sagittarius in 96 through to 2008, we thought, okay, so this is the end of religion and the end of complicated factors in law. And what we saw was, yes, the beginning of the end of conventional religion, but at the same time, fundamentalism really began to rise big time. So astrologers then said, okay, when Pluto moves into Capricorn over 2008 through to 2024, we'll see the end of, or the start of, world government. Now, this is actually becoming a bit close to home with the emergence of the superstates, such as the EU, but we're also seeing a lot more resentment and resistance to the idea of any type of imposed control and government, whether it be at the individual or the collective level. When Pluto moves into Aquarius from 2024 through to about 2037, 38, then we're going to see, on the positive side, we'll see a complete transformation and regeneration of attitudes around community, social life, and the way we interact with each other. But it could also lead to a major fragmentation and conflict between different communities around lifestyles and lifestyle management. Again, I suspect it'll be the death gasp of religion. Cults will become fewer in number but stronger, until in the end there'll be one fundamentalist, but they'll have 10 atom bombs. Yeah, something like that.
Wow. Well, let's see. Well, hopefully it's more in terms of tribes and communities that are kind of where people are finding each other rather than kind of fighting against.
I hope so, yes.
Yeah. Someone's asking, what do you think will happen to the current financial system?
Well, with the big changes in work practices that are going to be coming up, inevitably we're going to see some type of correction around the large-scale financial markets. The extremes of recent years will not be able to continue. I don't think we'll actually see a complete collapse of the financial system yet, but Uranus has moved into Taurus. And Taurus is a sign that's most commonly associated with things like assets, property, possessions, resources, finances. And Uranus is the change bringer. Uranus moved into Taurus 2 years ago. It's going to be there for another 5 years. And one of the things we will see, guaranteed, we will see the emergence of alternative currencies. And it will be a global currency, such as crypto, where there is no banks and no bankers, and every transaction is public. So it's not a broken model, but it's the first stage of a new model. So eventually I am looking at some type of global currency, which is going to destroy the exchange markets. If it's just one currency in the world, there'll be no point in speculating in currencies. So I don't see anything wrong with that. Of course, some people go, one currency, the guy's a communist. But I don't see a problem with it personally.
I mean, that's what a lot of people have been asking for, isn't it? Because otherwise it's so unfair and so unequal, because why should one country be a lot more prosperous just because of their currency to another? And
exactly.
So
exactly.
If people want change, then we have to embrace all of it, right? We can't just be picky about what we want.
Yeah, it may be forced upon us. I mean, not by anyone or any one group or nation or bank or anything. It may be the force of circumstance, because the markets become so extremely volatile that currencies collapse. Without some deliberate intervention and some type of new way of managing resources and finances, it could lead to some type of massive economic collapse globally.
Oof, okay, so so do you think people should, I mean, some people have been saying to invest in things like gold, silver, something that's more tangible rather than online?
Okay, two things. One is, I am very much a supporter of Extinction Rebellion. And one of the people I know in Extinction Rebellion, he wrote about it in the Extinction Rebellion handbook. He said he was advising some of the very top people in the world on how to manage their security in the event of some type of global breakdown. And they said, well, we can't guarantee the trust of our security because we can't pay them enough and we can't look after their families as well as us. So investigating getting robots. But, you know, my friend turned around to them and said, well, look, why don't you just pay everyone a bit more money? Oh, no, we can't do that. If you've got this, clients come to me and say, okay, I've got a bit of money. What should I invest in? So, well, the worst thing you can do is put it in the stock market. As we've seen, the stock markets have plummeted by over 1/3 in the last 3 months. The Dow Jones was 30,000, now it's 20,000. Yes, things like commodities, oil, gold, silver, platinum, they go up and down. Gold is at an all-time high. Gold's gone up 30, 40% in the last year. It's stupidly high. It will come down again. But it never really comes down. There's one stock that never goes down, and that's coffee, because the world runs on coffee. But really, the best, if you've got a lot of money and you want to invest it in a way that's both socially responsible and lucrative, then buy residential property to rent out and pay a management company to run it for you. And you give them 20% of the income, you get the other 80% as being a sleeping partner. People will always need somewhere to live. Rental income is not a quick way to make a lot of money, but it is regular and consistent and stable. So property, residential property.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think physical stuff that you can physically touch is probably a lot more safer than like you said, investing it in a stock market.
It's a paper, yeah.
And there's a guy called Robert Kiyosaki who speaks about all that and kind of how this is a much better way of actually investing your money and putting it into like a actual property or something. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, there you go, guys. So any financial questions, I think we addressed, well, Steve addressed them. Next question. Let's see. Okay. Oh, someone asked about the disappearance of the Saturn rings. Do you know anything about that?
Only a little bit. Saturn's rings have not always been there. Saturn's rings are made of absolutely microscopically thin particles, which are the result of various excuse me, moons disintegrating over the years. And Saturn's gravity either pushes them further out or sucks them further in. The rings do change. Photos from about 50 years ago show the rings as being a lot thicker than they are now, and of many different shapes. But this is cyclical. They will grow again. The nature of Saturn is rather strange because it's a gas giant, but Jupiter's gas is hot and it expands. So it's about growth. Saturn's gas, it's so far away, it's frozen, so it contracts. And the rings suggest constriction. And because Saturn's as far away as you can see with a naked eye, it deals with boundaries. So, no, I think Saturn's rings will still be there in 100 years' time. They may be a different thickness or different colour because they're changing all the time.
Interesting. Okay. I hope that answers, well, definitely answered for me. I didn't even know that they disappear. So that was useful. Someone's asking that they want to know a little bit more about the Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter conjunction energy as other planets conjoin in their small cycles.
Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto. Saturn's moved into Aquarius now. It's going to move back into Capricorn later this year. This is the only time for centuries and centuries. It's the only time, I think, in the last 2,000 years. I think. I'm not sure on that. But it's the only time for a very, very, very long time where we've had Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn at the same time. And they've been conjunct to each other. So everybody will be aware of this in their own individual horoscope. And if you're a little bit astrologically aware, then look at your chart and look at which house of the zodiac this big conjunction is falling in. Look at the area of Capricorn in your own personal chart, see which house it's in, and that area, whether it be the house of relationships or health or finance or career, that is the area that's being affected. And this will continue through to really mid-December of this year.
Wow. And do you think someone else is asking about, oh, you have loads of comments, by the way, saying, thank you so much, Steve, this is great. So everyone's enjoying it. So thanks, guys, for the comments. Someone's asking about, do you think there'll be more ugly things being revealed? Because so far there's been a lot.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Human capacity to be corrupt, sordid, twisted and perverted, especially when it comes to treating each other that way. The way we abuse women and children and elders. I don't believe anybody who wants to be a politician should be allowed to be one. Same as a priest. You know, we should elect people to these roles even when they don't want to be them, because anyone who wants power should not be given it. I personally believe that seriously big roles should be given to women, and I know women can be just as bad as men, but I don't want to come across as a feminist, but neither do I want to come across as an anti-feminist. But especially in religion, it's been such a male-dominated situation for 4,000 years. And yet the corruption, the perversions that have been done against children and women over the millennia by all churches, it is disgusting. They should be ashamed of themselves. And most of them are stinking rich as well, out of the products of slavery and persecution. It is so, don't get me started on religion. I could go on for hours on one. Religion has persecuted astrology. Remember, priests used to burn astrologers at the stake.
And witches, yeah. Witches.
Yeah, they used to turn them upside down, nail their tongues to the roof of their head, and then burn them to death using their own astrological books. This happened to the professor of astrology, Cecco d'Ascoli, in 1500 in Bologna.
Really?
Yeah, astrologers have always been persecuted by the church. Well, astrologers are interested in empowering people to have their own relationship with the divine, to which the church goes, "Oi, you're muscling in on my territory." So, and yet some churches, really good people. Some of them are really good. Some of them are genuinely pious and well-meaning and community and spiritually orientated. Not the majority, but some.
Yeah, definitely we can't put them all in the same basket, but I think, yeah, we've discovered by now that the majority of them are pretty corrupt. So yeah, there's a really interesting Netflix series, God, I forgot the name, but it's basically about the church and a specific one in the US that had been abusing girls, for a long time, and it was terrible, really, really bad. But yeah, hopefully, well, the church was kind of like the middleman, wasn't it, between us and the divine? So it was kind of that control.
It worked for a long time when we were working in the fields, but we don't need anyone else now to tell us what we should be believing or how we should be interacting with God. We're capable of doing it on our own now. So if a church is going to turn around and say, okay, we'll change our attitudes now, we'll act as a kind of mentor, counselor, advisor, safety net, security blanket, give you advice, do something to help the community, then I'm all in favour of it. But the second anyone starts telling me what I should be thinking or feeling or how I should be believing, then it's like, no, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Someone's asking if you've met Joy Usher. They said that they learned from Bernadette and Joy.
I know of Joy. I've never actually met her, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough doing my MA occasionally to be sat next to some very, very well-respected astrologers. There was one particular session where I was sat between Bernadette Brady on one side and Liz Green on the other, and I was like, my God, these are the heroes of astrology. And I was being taught by people like Nick Campion and Patrick Curry, and these at the time were like the gods of astrology. These are great people. They're still all alive now, but most of them are beginning to, just a little bit older than me. I was the enfant terrible of that master's degree back in 2003, 2004. I was the one asking all the difficult questions. questions.
You were one of those ones. You were one of the difficult.
One of my tutors was going on about how there's a character from the Italian in the 1500s, Descartes, and he was the one who differentiated between mind and feeling. And he said, "I think, therefore I am." And I queried this. I said, if he had said, "I feel, therefore I am," the whole of history would have been different. And my tutor said, "Yes, but he didn't. He said, "I think, therefore I am." And I said to my tutor, "Yeah, but that's total bollocks. That's total rubbish." And my tutor said, "Yes, Steve, but bollocks is not an acceptable academic term." Right. So, so yeah, that was interesting. But I still think that Descartes was completely wrong. But anyway, that's another story.
So you were a rebel when you were young.
I've never considered myself an anarchist or a rebel, but I've always considered myself someone who asks difficult questions. And yeah.
Someone's just asked, who were the people that you mentioned will be taking a hit from the last half of August? Which, I guess, which star signs?
It's predominantly those people born over the 14th to the 21st of January, July, April, and October. Not exclusively, but predominantly.
So January, July, and October, mainly.
Yeah. January, July, April, and October. 14th to the 21st. Okay. Which is a significant. That's sort of 10% of the world's population. 8%, something like that. So there's going to be global repercussions in mid-August.
Oh wow! Oh boy, we better tighten up our belts for that. Okay, another question. If we are born with a retrograde planet, do we feel it doubly, or when it's retrograde, when it retrogrades during the transit? So do we feel it more than once?
The Earth goes around the Sun at different speeds to other planets. So because we go faster around the Sun than most other planets, there'll come a time where we're one side of the Sun and the other planets are the other side of the Sun. So then if we could see the other planets, which we can't because the Sun's in the way, but if we could see them, we'd see them going backwards against the backdrop of the stars. They're not actually traveling backwards. They just appear to be because we're going faster in the other direction. That's termed retrograde motion. And when a planet is retrograde in a personal chart, then the lessons of that planet are likely to be learned more internally rather than they are externally, more as a result of internal experiences rather than external experiences. When a planet is retrograde in the sky and it's aspecting your own retrograde planet, then you're in a very good position to be able to compare your own personal experiences with what's going on in the outside world. So yeah, that's a really good question, really intelligent. And the answer is yes. If you're born with a retrograde planet and a sign, and a planet in the sky is retrograde at the same time, you will have a degree of recognition of experience that you wouldn't normally have. Really good question.
Okay, let's see, what else? Someone's asking whether they're launching their channel at the right time. So I guess, would there be a good time to launch something new?
When? Now or in August?
They haven't specified, but I guess, well, in this whole year, is there a good time? Is there more?
Fortune favors the brave. Anything that you begin, start, initiate, launch, instigate this year will either do very well indeed, or it will crash and burn spectacularly. You know, there's no middle ground on this one. What I am saying to a lot of people is that there does seem to be a time towards the end of the year where there's a lot of new opportunities for fresh starts. And with both Jupiter and Saturn moving into Aquarius within a few days of each other in the third week of December, just before the solstice, it does seem that third week of December is an excellent launch point and fresh start point for a lot of people and for humanity in general.
December, yeah.
So I shall be at Stonehenge on December the 21st, social distancing permitting. And yeah, hoping for a whole fresh start.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we should all prepare. So would you say up until then we can kind of be doing the readjusting of what we're doing, because I guess everyone's kind of, a lot of people.
Yeah, everyone's gonna. There's a massive time of readjustment. We're all gonna go back to work mid-May, early June. Everyone's gonna go back to work, and we're gonna try and go back to it being the way it was, and then it's not gonna work, and then it's gonna take 3 or 4 months before we think, oh, right. So how do we work this? And new patterns will come out of the mix. There will be a couple of hiccups along the way, but by the time we're into early September, mid-September, the first signs of the new futures should be beginning to emerge. There'll still be further hiccups, but by the end of the year, we should have a new social way of moving forward collectively in a way that potentially offers hope for the future. Cautious optimism. I am on record as having said that I do expect COVID to return later this year. So I just want to stress once again that whilst anyone who wants to take vaccines it's their choice. I would never say don't do it if you want to. But I honestly feel that at the end of the day, the only long-term answer to this is through herd immunity and through having a good immune system.
Nothing can beat that. Yeah. There's definitely alternative ways out there of doing things. So vaccines.
Yeah.
Great questions, guys. Thank you for submitting them. Right. Do you want to take any more, or do you want to wrap it up? I can be here all day, but yeah.
Start to draw it to a close. Let's do a few more, and let's call it quits in about 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Okay. All right. Great comments from everyone, by the way. Thank you guys so much for commenting and all your questions. Yeah, it's really, really helpful. Okay, let's see. Question. Saturn gives form to something, makes tangible limits. Is the time master putting limits, boundaries, and wisdom in lessons and karma? So Aquarius is fixed, air, futuristic. Okay, I'm not sure I get that. Okay, so something about Saturn having the time limits and boundaries and wisdom and karma related to Aquarius. Does that make sense?
Saturn is the Roman name for the Greek deity Kronos, from which we get the word chronometer, timepiece. Saturn is old father time. And until the discovery of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in the last couple of 100 years, Saturn was always seen as the sort of overseer, the large, big, godlike figure of astrology. And he was seen as old father time. And Saturn used to rule Aquarius. I suggest that one of the things that's going to happen with Saturn moving into Aquarius is that we're not going to break the rules, but we're going to bend them. And that what used to be strict, rigid boundaries of concrete and steel are going to change into transparent rubber and elastic. So we're going to make changes, and hopefully we're not going to be breaking things down, but we are going to be evolving things, transforming. There's transmutation, where we change the structure of things, but don't destroy them in the process.
So mutate, and that's very air sign thing, isn't it? So it's very Aquarian, Gemini. It's very about mutation, changing, transforming, and kind of doing all that.
Yeah, I mean, to quote one of my personal heroes, Terence McKenna, the future is in the imagination. Goethe in the 15th century said that whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it now. Boldness has genius and magic in it. Start now. And what have you got to lose by trying? So yeah, I'm actually quite optimistic about the long-term future. I get really depressed when I get people say to me, oh, we're all going to be controlled, we're all going to have implant chips, we're all going to be vaccinated, and it's all done by big pharma and big governments, and they're all going to control us. And it's like, why are you even wasting your time being alive? You know?
Where's the positivity? Come on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone wants to know about the summer solstice. Is it significant? Is there anything going on around that time?
The summer solstice this year, no, not a lot.
No.
Summer solstice is just a general time for celebration in the northern hemisphere. Obviously, it's dark in the southern hemisphere, but in the northern hemisphere, yes, it's a time of the greatest light. We only get a few hours day darkness in Britain. But astrologically, no, this year it's not a major feature around summer solstice. Winter solstice will be much more important in the northern hemisphere. I go to Stonehenge at winter solstice. In summer solstice, you get 50,000 hippies. At summer solstice, you get 2,000 tribe people. It's much more community spirit.
Yeah, okay, great. So definitely the winter solstice more important. Someone wants to know about predictions for World War III. Astrological predictions for World War III.
World War III? Well, let's see what happens in North Korea. No, I'm joking. The only type of world war we're going to have in the future is not going to be with guns or missiles. World War III, if it ever happens, will be almost exclusively fought out on laptops.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's already going on, isn't it, with the whole conspiracy stuff and everything, who says who's right, who's wrong. I mean,
one thing that's really grown in the last 3 or 4 weeks is the amount of hacking that's going on and the amount of spoofing that's going on. So many people are saying to me, I'm getting 2 or 3 emails a day now telling me that my PayPal or my bank accounts or my Microsoft's been compromised. Click here to sort it out. It's like, don't.
Yeah.
Just don't. It's not, they're not intelligent, these hackers. They're, or rather the people, not many people are falling for it. They're getting desperate.
There's been a lot of that. But even things with kind of like freedom of speech, because there's a online sort of TV live stream, thing called London Real that streams, London Real.
Yes, I'm very familiar with it.
And from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from everywhere. So what do you think about that? Do you think that's going to happen more now, more regularly?
Well, I see no reason why it shouldn't. It's causing controversy, it's contentious, but that's not a bad thing. I'm a bit sort of selective of whether I choose to believe much of the stuff on it. They do seem to deliberately go for the sensationalist and the somewhat wacky stuff, but hey, some people really like that. If someone's that insecure or unstable in themselves that they're searching for paranoid conspiracy theories to believe in, then there's plenty of stuff out there for them to find. And whether you agree with it or not, it's out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's just strange that they've gone to such an extent to ban them from these platforms, isn't it? I find that strange.
Yes, whether I like their content or not, you cannot deny people free speech.
Yeah, which is, I think, why people have been so riled up over it, because there's tons of crap online. There's billions of videos online now. But
I get so much crap on my site. I get so many people troll me on YouTube, but it's a free world. I'm also free to delete their comments.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can't deny people the right to say what they believe to be true, even if they appear to be misguided. But hey, who's to say what works for you doesn't work for you?
Yeah.
It's your world, your perception. We're all responsible for our own perception.
Yeah.
So if we choose to believe in a world that's full of conspiracy theories and negativity, then fine, that's your choice. I prefer, and I'm not on cloud cuckoo land, but I prefer to live in a world where people smile at each other and actually mean well towards each other without being off planet. And most of my friends are like that. All of my friends and most of my clients are like that as well.
That's a good way to do it. I think that with this is more, if people, because if, for example, with the vaccines, you know, people do want to find out whether this will be good for them or not. So just like with this information, I guess people just want to know more. They want to be more informed. So whether it's a lie or truth, that's, I guess it's up to us. But for them to actually ban those people from, do you think that's going to be coming up more? Do you think we have to restrict ourselves from what we say online, and otherwise we'll be deleted, or our videos might be deleted and things like that?
No, that can't happen, because if you stop people from saying what they want to say, then okay, you might ban them from certain stations, but they'll find other ways of broadcasting it. And that's where the dark web and stuff like that comes in. You know, you can never stop it. You just have to balance it, and to an extent moderate it. And for all the negative, you have to come back with something positive, to balance it out. And that's where people like you and me are doing our stuff.
Yeah. Someone's asking whether you know about the repercussions for China, whether the astrology is showing something, or what will become.
Long ago, I wrote a little 20-page document on the horoscope of China, and I self-printed it. I only printed about 100 copies. I've got one left somewhere. And I worked, China's an Aquarius country. It's Aquarius with Aquarius rising, if I remember rightly. So when Pluto, China's going to go through a massive change in about 7 or 8 years' time when Pluto passes on its sun. I think China was born around about January the 26th, something like that. Or that's when the Chinese Politburo took power and declared the Chinese Communist Republic, which was the actual date of the new birth date for China. So yeah, it's going to be massive changes when Pluto moves into Aquarius for China, massive. But then the whole world's going to be going through changes in political boundaries. The idea of individual countries, borders, they need to become less regulated, more porous. At the end of the day, we are one species. If an alien or a galactic visitor was circling around Earth now, looking down on us and going, well, do we want to invite these people to join the Universal Brotherhood? Most people are going to be going, absolutely not. They're all mad, you know, because they're just fighting each other.
Exactly.
So we're not ready for that level of development yet, but we're aspiring towards it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of aliens, someone's asking whether there will be contact between humankind and the third kind.
There already is.
There already is.
Don't even get me started on crop circles. I've been going in crop circles for over 30 years, and the things I've seen and the impressions I've had and the things I know, that's what my PhD is going to be on. And yeah, they're already here. They've been here longer than us.
I think so.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And what about babies born in the summer? Would that have any special meaning?
No, but the baby's born in 8 months' time. The baby's born as a result of lockdown. The COVIDians. Yeah. There's going to be a really big surge of Capricorns and Aquarians next year.
Yes, more Aquarians. Bring more to the tribe. Okay, right. Any more? Let's see. How do you see the faraway coming age of Capricorn in Sagittarius? Oh, that's quite
wow.
Yeah.
That is over 2,000 years away.
Yeah. I mean, we'll be aliens by then. We'll be maybe flying in UFOs by then. That's a long way away.
I suspect by that time, we will have expanded out of the solar system. We will be living in different stars, different planets outside of the solar system, if humanity is still alive. Fascinating concept. It's too much for my little brain to envisage.
It's a lot, yeah. I mean, 2,000 years away, yeah. Judging by the way things are progressing now, it will be a completely different world.
Well, look how much we've changed in the last 60 years.
Yeah, it'll be a lot. I mean, there's some people that are kind of talking about having the solar flash, you know, happening in the next kind of 10, 20 years, and the whole electronics thing going down. So
yeah, that could happen. One solar flare would wipe out all the satellites, the internet would crash, mobiles would crash. We'd be knocked back 50 years just like that, bang. We'd recover, but it would take years. But then, while preparing for a solar flash, we thought, okay, but what if a pandemic strikes? Huh. You know, for years I've been talking about pandemics, solar flares, warfare on computer, cyber warfare. And then bang, it happens just like that, bang. Pandemic, no one was prepared.
yeah.
And now everything's changing. So we started on this. As we approach the end, let me come back to this, because there's no one out there who's going to make your world the way you want it to be. We've all been a little bit mollycoddled in recent years. We've all bought into the internet world for everything. You can get everything from Amazon. And now it's like, well, wait a minute, we've had a bit of a culture shock now, collectively. And it's time to remold our views of the world, of the way we live in the world, and the way we take responsibility for our own lives. And that's one thing that's going to be permanent as a result of this virus. That's that individuals are going to demand a greater say in the way their lives are living. And that's one of the most positive things about the gradual move into Aquarius, the rise of individuality within the confines of the larger community structure. So I really like this. It's about the growth of the individual, the assertion of greater individual human rights, and the end to persecution on people by age or gender. Sounds an altruistic dream, but I expect it to be in place before I physically die. Big hopes.
Let's hope.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely more altruism hopefully coming in with all of that.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Steve, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure to have you. And yeah, it's just mind-blowing in terms of only what the astrology can predict and has already predicted and has been for the last, you know, thousands and thousands of years. Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Leslie, it's been a pleasure. But what even more has been a pleasure is that somewhere out there in a blogosphere, there's 300, 400, 500 people who have been watching this. And I've got no idea who you are. I don't know any of you, or probably I do, but I don't. And I just hope you've had a great time. I've really enjoyed this. And if you've had as good a time as I have, then fantastic. We've all done a little bit of good. We've all put a little bit of laughter in. And the world is just that 1/1,000,000th of 1% of our place.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your comments and for your questions. I'm sorry if I haven't been able to answer all of them. Or Steve hasn't been able to answer all of them, but you know where to catch him. Steve Judd Astrology, and also stevejudd.com. Was it .com or
.co?
.co, that's it. So
Yeah.
stevejudd.co. And also his YouTube site, you can catch him on every week, where he does his amazing daily updates of what's going on in the world. And I love the jokes that you've been adding to that. It definitely makes my life a little bit easier for the day.
There's a few more yet to come. Yeah.
No,
I'll be keeping doing the jokes until the lockdown's over.
Yeah, no, they're pretty good. I love them. All right, great. Thank you so much, guys. And until next time, bye.